This video is just a quick overview of the dementia theories. I'm not going to go into a lot of pictures or anything, but just so you've got them all in one place. Okay, the first one I call it the Babs theory, and what I'm calling this means beta amyloid BS theory. Okay, I think conventional Alzheimer's disease theory is a big joke. And I say this because if you say somebody's got Alzheimer's dementia, that's almost meaningless. What's the historical finding? There is no historical finding. What is the physical exam finding? There is none to definitively diagnose Alzheimer's. What is the lab test? There is none that's definitive. What's the imaging test? There's none that's definitive. I know they say medial temporal lobe atrophy was associated with parietal convexity atrophy, but I seldom, hardly ever see that pattern. I see thousands of demented brains. They'll also tell you beta amyloid, PET, but that's not actually that useful of a test. All right, it can be positive in somebody who doesn't have it. It can be negative in somebody who does. Autopsy is not that useful either. You can get too much overlap between normals and so-called Alzheimer's such that it's really not that useful. So if you have a disease that you can't diagnose and you can't treat it either, there's no effective treatment for so-called Alzheimer's. The whole thing's kind of a big joke. All right, what else? Buy my supplement or you will die. Okay, there's people out there talking about how saying people need omega-3s or they're likely to become demented, but if you look at that study, I think Jeff Nelson did a very good review of it. It's quite overrated. This Chinese study suggesting that there's less dementia in persons who ate more Alzheimer's, but the study wasn't well controlled and it's not that impressive. I don't think based on what I know that that's probably necessary. Okay, then the next one is the fructose F's up everything theory. Okay, and this is largely coming from Robert Lustig and Richard Johnson. And I think, yeah, there are some problems with high fructose corn syrup, but they exaggerate that it's causing all these widespread problems. Quite often, it's not one thing that's making a person fat and sick. It's a whole bunch of things. And by that, I mean it's also the amount of fat they eat. It's also the amount of omega-6 cooking oils. It's also the amount of MSG in their food. It's also the amount of, and when I say MSG, I also mean free glutamate. It's also the amount of estrogenic chemicals they're exposed to, the amount of stress, lack of sleep, etc. Okay, what else? The 36 HOR program. Well, actually, let me go to the one right above it. LWEF-CAS. Okay, what is that? Lose weight by eating fat. Caffeine helps sleep. So I'm kind of joking there, but actually, a lot of the most famous nutrition experts are the ones that are the most full of BS because you become famous by BSing the public. If you lie to the public or say something stupid to the public that promotes a commercial product, that commercial company will find out a way to help you get promoted on the internet. Okay, so what am I saying is, the lower the percent of calories from fat, the skinnier the population is. So this idea of you're going to eat, soy and omega-3s and nuts and seeds, all this fat, and that's going to help you to lose weight, that doesn't compute. Okay, then the other thing I often hear is so important to get your sleep, and it's good to have coffee. Coffee drinkers are healthier, up to 3 cups a day, just have the last one by 2 o'clock. That's stupid, saying you're going to drink more coffee, it's going to improve your sleep. No, it's ridiculous, or that you're going to sleep well, all that coffee. Best thing is 0 coffee, and avoid high-fat foods. No nuts, like Esselstyn says. Jeff Nelson did a great videos on nuts and on omega-3s, and he showed that there was all the positive stuff on nuts, was industry funded that he showed, and also the omega-3s totally overrated. That's been my impression as well. That's what I've gotten from reading the Dr. McDougall papers as well. Okay, so the next one I thought was kind of funny. This is like Dale Bredesen. He's a pretty famous neurologist, and he sometimes speaks with these guys, Perlmutter and Hyman, but Bredesen's sort of the real famous one with his book about, claiming that he can do a tremendous amount to prevent dementia. And he does have some good ideas, and he is a bright guy, but I call it the 36 HOR problem. So HOR just means holes on the roof, because he has this picture of a bunch of holes on the roof, something like in the ballpark of 36. And then his approach is, I call it the LA toe approach. Labs and tests out the wazoo. And it makes a lot of money. It's a money-making method. So the patient has to get all these diagnostic tests, take all these different things. That's profitable, okay? And so he's really super famous, best-selling book. He's interviewed by everybody. So if you promote a method, I think a lot of functional medicine goes down this path. If you can promote a medical approach to a problem that requires the patient pay for a bunch of expensive lab tests and has to take a bunch of supplements or pills, that will get promoted because everybody can make money off that. On the other hand, if you just teach people about how to keep themselves healthy, there's no money in that. Okay, the next one is ABBA, and it's not just a Europop music group. It's not God the Father, and this is what I call the all because of bad aluminum theory. And this guy, Christopher Exley, he's real famous for promoting this. His nickname is Mr. Aluminum. He's a PhD researcher of this. Dr. McDougall gave a very good lecture on aluminum toxicity to the brain. And Jeff Nelson also gave a great lecture on aluminum toxicity to the brain. So that's all well and good. And aluminum truly is a major neurotoxin. It's toxic to the pancreas, too. It increases the risk of diabetes. It can cause necrosis of beta cells. It's just a toxin. It doesn't belong in the human body. And it certainly is very neurotoxic. It's also a mitochondrial inhibitor. So anyways, that's all well and true, but there's a lot more things that are affecting the brain. But yeah, you do want to avoid aluminum as best you can. I would never put my food on aluminum foil. I would never cook on it. I also avoid it any way I can. I filter it out of my water, etc. Okay, excitotoxicity. This is a theory that came about from John Olney in the 1960s, especially with his work with MSG, noticing it was in the baby foods, etc. Blalock wrote a great book on this in 1997, Excitotoxins, The Taste That Kills. Dennis Choi and Mark Madsen are two very famous researchers who studied a lot and written a lot of papers on excitotoxicity. Danton O'Day's written some good work on calmodulin. And the guy who wrote the really big stuff on omega-6 cooking oils was Tetsumori Yamashima, the Japanese neuroscientist. That's the idea of omega-6 cooking oils, like PUFAs in general. They tend to undergo lipid peroxidation. You produce this toxic aldehyde, hydroxynonenal, and then that leads to activation of this cytoplasm protease, as well as release of a lysosome protease, cathepsin. So it's called the calpain-cathepsin theory of neurodegeneration. And the bottom line is, why are so many Japanese becoming demented when that used to be rare? It's because they're eating more omega-6 cooking oils, was the conclusion of Tetsumori Yamashima. He's written a bunch of papers on that. He's written a whole book on that. I've actually given lectures. I've given lectures about all these things, just about. Not all of them, but almost all of them. Okay, leaky gut and iron overload. Amyloidogenic clotting and the turning of the beta amyloid into prions, prionization, if you will, by Douglas Callinetheresia praetorius. So the bottom line is leaky gut's bad. Things that cause leaky gut tend to cause leaky blood-brain barrier, which then exposes the brain to more toxins. And vice versa, too. Things that cause leaky blood-brain barrier tend to cause leaky gut. So you want to avoid that. And there's a whole bunch of things. You know, we've been through this before. My whole list of ways to avoid leaky gut, for example. EMF issues with regard to opening up of voltage-gated calcium channels, and then the no-oh-no theory, nitric oxide, peroxynitrite theories of Martin Pall. Okay, the next one is mouse equivalent theories. Okay, mouse equivalent theories, and this has also been called the vascular hypothesis of dementia. Probably the most accurate way to phrase it would be the chronic cerebral hypoperfusion theory of Jack Delatorre. And that was kind of a Copernican moment. I thought it was awesome and great because what he did was he got, the people that are in the know to think about a different way to think of Alzheimer's besides this stupid, or dementia, besides this stupid old beta amyloid, which is beta amyloid theory has been a disaster. It's wasted billions of dollars in research money that could have been spent on this useful stuff. And it kind of reminds me of cancer. They've gone down the wrong path in cancer research, always talking about the SMT, somatic mutation theory, rather than talking about the metabolic theory of cancer, which takes you into useful ideas and ways to help patients. Okay, so what I'm basically saying here too is beta amyloid leads you to nothing. Somebody tells you beta amyloid theory. What do you do about that? There's nothing you really can think of too effectively to do. Versus once you hear the mouse equivalent theory about tying off the carotid in the mice and how there's all these, I call them mouse equivalents of chronic cerebral hypoperfusion, aortic valve regurg, aortic stenosis, aortic valve stenosis, atrial fibrillation with decreased filling of the left ventricle, so less blood gets pumped to the heart, overtreatment of hypertension, congestive heart failure, etc., then it makes a lot of sense. So Copernican moment in the sense that it was the big, obvious jump away from beta amyloid thinking. Okay, the last one is NVU, neurovascular uncoupling. LAB, learn about the brain, run away from toxins. And so that's my theory. Basically, you got a metabolic rate and you got an oxygen glucose delivery, which normally are coupled. But if you start lowering the oxygen glucose delivery, you can get farther and farther away here, where this neuron's not getting enough oxygen and glucose delivery, and it can die by apoptosis. And then you make it worse if you start giving stimulants, caffeine, tobacco, sleep deprivation, amphetamines, attention deficit meds, glyphosate, other excitotoxins, beta amyloid, protein accumulation. And the wider this gap gets between oxygen glucose delivery and metabolic rate, the more likely these neurons will start going into programmed cell death, apoptosis, because they can't meet their metabolic needs. So anyways, that was a quick summary so you could see them all in one place, the dementia theories. These are the best ones. Anybody has some additional ideas, you can put it in the comments. So anyways, hope you found that helpful.